Nothing transforms a calm, respectable adult into a ruthless criminal mastermind faster than the words, "no refunds." The moment a person is handed a room key, something primal awakens. The front desk stops being a friendly service counter and becomes the front line of a high-stakes financial war. They are absolutely convinced they were born to win. Marble lobbies and complimentary mints create a strange illusion that the normal rules of money, honesty, and basic shame have been temporarily suspended at the door. These are 8 real, fully documented attempts by greedy hotel guests to outsmart the front desk for free rooms, fake refunds, and luxury upgrades they never came close to paying for. Every single one of them was executed with breathtaking confidence, and every single one of them failed in the most spectacular way imaginable. Let's check in. 1. Our first contestant is Gerald, a 64-year-old self-described professional traveler from Florida, a man who treated the global hospitality industry not as a network of businesses, but as a vast, poorly defended ATM. Gerald's weapon of choice was the humble bedbug. He would check into a mid-range hotel, sleep soundly for 2 nights, and then, on the morning of departure, descend upon the front desk in a state of theatrical horror, clutching a small matchbox. Inside that matchbox were his bedbugs. He demanded a full refund, 3 nights of future complimentary stays, and what he called emotional distress compensation for the trauma of cohabiting with insects. At first, this might sound like the genuine complaint of an unfortunate victim, but Gerald's operation had scale. By the time the hotel grew suspicious, he had run the identical performance at 6 different properties in a single quarter. He carried a dedicated bedbug starter kit. He maintained a meticulous spreadsheet titled, with no apparent irony, Annual Yield. When the duty manager hesitated, Gerald escalated instantly, invoking the implied warranty of habitability and threatening to involve a health inspector, a lawyer, and a local news station he was certain would be fascinated by his suffering. The hotel, unfortunately for Gerald, called an actual entomologist. The verdict was swift and humiliating. The insects in the matchbox were dead. They were a laboratory strain not native to the region, the very same species he had discovered at the previous 6 hotels. Gerald had essentially been traveling the country with a tiny coffin of incriminating evidence, presenting it proudly at each counter. The chain flagged his profile, cross-referenced the dates, and banned him for life across every property on 3 continents. Gerald's final, defiant demand, that they at least reimburse him for the cost of the bedbugs, was politely declined. 2. Next, we have Drake, 29, who arrived in a floor-length leopard print coat and sunglasses he refused to remove indoors, radiating the unshakable confidence of a man who has never once checked his own bank balance. Drake was an influencer. He marched to the front desk and explained slowly, as if addressing a child, that he would be requiring the penthouse suite, complimentary in exchange for exposure to his audience of over 2 million devoted followers. Tell me honestly, have you ever met someone so certain of their own importance that the laws of economics seemed personally offended? Drake produced a media kit. It was, on closer inspection, a single slide built from a free template, decorated with the word synergy in gold lettering. He spoke of brand partnerships and content packages, and the immense, irreversible damage his silence could inflict upon any hotel foolish enough to charge him. By the 3rd minute, Drake had escalated. He was now threatening a defamation lawsuit and a coordinated public relations catastrophe that would, in his words, end this establishment. He invoked his rights as a verified creative professional. He demanded the manager. The manager arrived. What happened next was quiet, and surgical, and merciless. The manager, smiling warmly, asked to see Drake's channel. Drake, sensing victory, handed over his phone. The follower count, displayed in crisp digital honesty for everyone at the desk to see, read 206. Of those, the manager noted gently, a striking number appeared to be accounts named things like CryptoWolf99 that had never posted anything at all. There was a long, sacred silence. Drake explained that he was between algorithms. He was offered the standard rate for a standard room. He declined with enormous dignity and left to find a hotel that understood vision. 3. Linda, 52, was not a scammer in the crude, amateurish sense of the previous two. Linda was a professional. Linda had a system. At the conclusion of every single hotel stay, Linda would appear at the front desk to report, with the weary sorrow of a woman who has simply endured too much, that her experience had been ruined. The pool had been noticeably cold. The elevator had been emotionally slow. The complimentary breakfast had contained an atmosphere of disappointment. Each grievance was vague enough to be undeniable and serious enough to demand what the industry calls service recovery, that is, free money. For years, this worked beautifully, but Linda's downfall was her own professionalism. When a curious manager finally looked into her account, he discovered something remarkable. Linda did not improvise her complaints. She read them from a laminated card. She belonged to an online group, several thousand members strong, devoted entirely to the art of extracting compensation, complete with recommended trigger phrases and a shared library of past victories. Linda had a folder. The folder had tabs. When confronted, Linda did not retreat. She drew herself up to her full height and reminded the manager that she was a Diamond Elite member, that her time was worth $400 an hour, and that every minute he wasted disputing her was, legally, costing her money he would soon be required to repay. It was a magnificent bluff. It was also, the manager noted, the same speech as she had delivered word for word at this exact hotel 14 months earlier. He simply opened her file and read her own history back to her, complaint by identical complaint. The compensation was zero. Her access to every promotional offer in the chain quietly evaporated. 4. Leonard, 67, was a retired accountant, and he approached his hotel stays the way other men approach chess. Patiently, obsessively, and with the firm belief that the entire system was simply a puzzle waiting to be solved in his favor. Leonard's target was the best rate guarantee that cheerful promise hotels make to match any lower price a guest can find online. Leonard could always find a lower price. Leonard could find prices so low they defy the laws of commerce itself. His method, refined over months, was a marvel of patience. He would arrive, book the room, and then triumphantly present a screenshot from an obscure travel website showing the identical room available for a fraction of the cost, sometimes for a sum that would barely cover the laundering of the sheets. He demanded the match, plus the additional discount the guarantee promised for the hotel's failure to spot the deal first. He spoke gravely of international free market price discovery and the guest's sacred right to fair value. The rate match team, as required, investigated the listing. And this is where Leonard's genius collapsed under the weight of itself. The mysterious website offering these impossible prices belonged to Leonard. He had built it. He had registered the domain, the records showed, the previous Tuesday. He was, in the most literal sense, negotiating against himself and losing. When presented with this discovery, Leonard did not blink. He argued that the website's ownership was legally irrelevant, and that a published price was a binding offer to the public, regardless of who published it. The team disagreed. So did, eventually, the domain registrar. Leonard paid the full rack rate in silence, already redesigning the website in his head. 5. Walter, 71, believed, with the conviction of a religious man, that the hotel minibar was a moral injustice, a trap laid for the weak. Walter would not be a victim of the minibar. Walter would defeat it. Over the course of his stay, Walter would methodically empty the minibar of every miniature spirit, every overpriced soda, every $4 packet of almonds. Then, the night before checkout, he would perform his masterstroke, refilling each tiny liquor bottle with tap water, resealing them with a craftsman's care, and arranging them back exactly as he found them. At checkout, when the inevitable charges appeared, Walter was ready. He was the very picture of wounded innocence. He had not touched the minibar. He demanded a forensic audit, insisted that the burden of proof rested entirely with the hotel, and declared he would not pay a single cent for refreshments he had clearly never consumed. There were two problems. The first was that Walter's hobby had quietly become a business. For years, he had been smuggling the genuine miniatures home and reselling them by the box at a regional flea market, where he was apparently both known and trusted. The second problem was more immediate. This particular hotel's minibar sat on a network of weight sensors. The system had recorded to the gram and to the second the exact moment each item was lifted, including the precise instant Walter's watered-down bottles were returned, now mysteriously lighter than physics permits for full ones. The itemized log was printed and slid across the marble. Walter studied it, adjusted his glasses, and asked whether the sensors themselves had been independently certified. They had. He paid. 6. Brad, 34, arrived for a bachelor weekend with what he insisted was a party of 2. The reservation said 2. The room was sold for 2. The 8 grown men who streamed through the lobby behind him over the following hours were, according to Brad, visitors, cousins, and at one point, memorably, a delivery. When the inevitable extra guest fees appeared on his account, Brad did what any reasonable man would do. He accused the hotel of discrimination. Brad's strategy was volume. He argued loudly in the middle of the lobby that the hotel was profiling his group, that he had been promised a verbal waiver of all fees by a staff member he could not name, and that he intended to pursue the matter with a vigor that would make the hotel deeply regret its greed. He demanded the fees be removed, and for the inconvenience, the entire stay comped. What Brad did not appreciate is that the modern hotel room is, quietly, one of the most thoroughly monitored spaces a person can occupy without committing a crime. Not by cameras inside the room, but by the key card. Every entry is logged. And Brad's door had logged a great many entries. The hallway cameras, meanwhile, had counted his guests with the patience of a census. The hotel was also mildly interested to learn that Brad and his friends had not, in fact, been relaxing. They had been running a small pop-up reselling operation out of the room, receiving and redistributing boxes of sneakers to a steady trickle of strangers. The final bill reflected maximum occupancy, several broken fixtures, and a polite note from the hotel's legal department. The verbal waiver, naturally, was never located. 7. Brigitte, 49, was, by some distance, the most elegant criminal on this list. She glided into luxury lobbies in tailored linen, ordered a sparkling water, and waited for the right moment to fall down. Brigitte's enterprise was the slip and fall, the gentle, theatrical collapse near a reception desk, followed by a softly delivered request that the hotel compensate her generously, quietly, and immediately, so as to avoid the unpleasantness of a lawsuit she had absolutely no intention of filing. I want you to truly appreciate the craftsmanship here. Brigitte did not simply fall. She studied the terrain. She selected high-end properties across several countries, reasoning, correctly, that they feared bad publicity most and litigated least. She varied her technique. Sometimes she favored the left ankle, sometimes, for variety, the right. She invoked premises liability, referenced an attorney whose name changed between visits, and dabbed at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. For a long time, Brigitte's profession was extremely profitable. Her undoing was a technology she had failed to account for. Modern luxury lobbies are watched in crystalline 4K resolution from a dozen angles. And the footage from her final performance was, frankly, a confession. It showed Brigitte entering the lobby, pausing, and slowly scanning the ceiling, locating every camera with the diligence of a woman who knows exactly what she is about to do. It then showed her selecting a spot, checking her surroundings one final time, and lowering herself to the marble floor with the controlled grace of a yoga instructor, a full second before any fall occurred. The hotel's legal team did not argue. They simply emailed her the clip, in high definition with no message attached. Brigitte checked out that afternoon and was never seen at the property again. 8. And so we arrive at our final and most confident contestants. Arthur and Barbara, a married couple in their early 70s who had, over many decades together, perfected the art of the unearned upgrade. Their masterpiece was the free night. They would approach the front desk with a certificate, a printed voucher for a complimentary stay, and present it with the serene authority of people who simply expect the world to comply. There was, as always, a small problem. The certificate was fake, not cleverly fake. It was a screenshot, enlarged, printed at home, and, on closer inspection, still bearing the faint watermark of the stock image website it had been stolen from. When the front desk agent gently pointed out that the voucher could not be verified, Arthur deployed the couple's ultimate weapon. He explained with great patience that a manager, he could not recall the name, but a very nice man last year, had personally promised them this free night. A promise, Arthur noted, is a verbal contract, legally binding under the basic principles of hospitality law. Barbara nodded in solemn agreement. The agent, uncertain, called for the manager on duty. And here, the universe arranged itself into perfect comedy. The manager who walked out was no longer merely a manager. In the intervening year, he had been promoted to regional director, and he happened to be on site that very day. He looked at Arthur, he looked at Barbara, and he remembered them, not because of any promise, but because they had attempted this exact forgery, at this exact desk, the previous year, when he had personally turned them away. He greeted them warmly, by name. He asked with genuine curiosity whether it was the same certificate. It was a slightly newer screenshot. The couple were not banned, exactly. They were simply, gently, and permanently remembered, undone, in the end, by the one thing no scam survives, being recognized. What connects all 8 of these magnificent strategists isn't that they were uniquely dishonest. Plenty of people are dishonest. What connects them is the strange spell a hotel lobby casts the moment you walk in. The quiet, intoxicating conviction that the rules, the math, and the basic laws of consequence have all been suspended, just for you, just for the length of your stay. So be honest with me in the comments. What is the boldest thing you have ever tried to get comped, upgraded, or refunded? And did you actually get away with it? I promise I won't tell the front desk. And if you'd rather watch these disasters unfold from the safe side of the counter, subscribe. It is the one loyalty program that never expires, never charges a resort fee, and never, ever puts you in the windowless room right next to the elevator.